when Jesus uses that metaphor, you can't put new wine in old wineskins, I think he's arguably talking about step one. He's talking about the remaking that has to happen. You have to become a new wineskin. He's talking about first century Judaism, whose structures are all accommodated to old time. And they're good for old time. They're appropriate for old time. That's how Paul talks about it in Galatians. The law, and then for Gentiles, the elements are all like a tutor. They're all like the structures that we depend on while we're children until it's time to grow up and inherit for ourselves. So it's not that the law is bad. It's just the law is old. And the new arrangement that comes calls for a new law, the law of the Spirit of life, Paul calls it in Romans 8. So this is where your wineskin is renewed, so to speak. This is also, though, remember, we're also talking about Israel, we're talking about people, not just persons. This is where the structures of our lives are made new so that they can accommodate our new place in new time. All right? The move from old time to new time is like a jet trip across 10 time zones from one place to another. And when you land in that new place, you're going to need to live a new life. That's what a new wineskin means. Jesus isn't going to fit in the old arrangement because he's bringing something else. The scriptures in the church from the very beginning have a different set of expectations for disciples. They have a different set of expectations about how followers of Jesus should live, right? And so that implies the gift of equipping to be able to live that life. That implies a kind of self-control, which is fruit of the Spirit. In Galatians, that's how he talks. Those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its desires. Purgation. And the change in desire that happens. And you're thinking, wait, but my desires didn't change enough. I know, mine didn't either. But we'll talk about that next week. In Galatians 5, Paul is already, he's speaking about something in the past tense. They have crucified the flesh with its desires. God gives us the Holy Spirit as a guarantee. That's one word that's used in the Bible. Or a down payment, you might think of. We have the Holy Spirit as the down payment on the full remaking that's to come. But the down payment isn't just in an escrow account. The Holy Spirit's active in our lives to help us, to walk with us. So fruit of the Spirit don't just come after the beginning. Fruit of the Spirit come at the beginning, right? In the form of love for God and one another. I mean, it's transformative, right? When you cross over, you feel a different kind of love for God and for your neighbor. You feel a joy, and you act out of that joy in some new ways. And people can say, hey, what happened to you? What changed? So, although we're going to talk a lot about fruit of the Spirit later in the process of salvation, I want you to see that the fruit of the Spirit belong in step 0, in other people's hospitality, and especially God's hospitality, kindness, and they belong here at the beginning. We are equipped. We are not equipped for the whole journey yet, but we're equipped for the beginning of the journey. Some Christians can treat step 1 as the whole story, right? Not just Catholics, Protestants too. Oh, I gave my life to Jesus. I accepted Jesus into my heart when I was 9. And so, yeah, my life doesn't really look any different, but I'm born again. I have my get out of hell free card. I'm good. What they've done is they've reduced salvation to nothing but step 1. Constantinianism, the arrangement where the church and the state kind of work out either a formal or an informal alliance, can be very heavy on step 1. And conversely, people who think it's all about step 1, when they feel that jet lag, they can doubt their own salvation. They can think, this isn't who I am, this doesn't really work, this isn't really powerful, I'm out. Yeah, I accepted Christ when I was 18, but nothing happened, so that didn't really mean anything. And finally, since this is a Wesleyan church, One of Wesley's real contributions to step one understandings is his stress on experiencing it. You ought to be able to point to this kind of shift in your life, of having your heart strangely warmed, right? Of being born again. You ought to be able to point to a real shift, a real change. You ought to be able to say, yeah, I took that flight from LA to the New Jerusalem. In terms of, if not inward personal experience, certainly other people ought to be able to point to a time. And people who don't have that time get kind of nervous. Like, oh gee, I always was Christian. I believed all my life. Am I really a Christian? What's happened there is the effect of tying regeneration almost exclusively to experience. You can see the blessings of that association, but you can also see the costs and the risks and the dangers of overly associating experience and rebirth.